goddamn microphones. Anyways, so yeah, we're gonna get into it tonight. Today we're gonna be talking about all this anti-work business that's been going on. You know it, you love it. Who doesn't love anti-work? So we're going to go checking that stuff out. We're going to go check out some videos, explainers. We're going to check out their Reddit page, see if we can find anything spicy or interesting in there. This was shadow produced by the one and only Big Paul. He shadow produced this for me. He threw some stuff together. I threw in a few extra things myself. And that's where we'll go. We'll just start off there. So the first video we're going to watch is the problem with r/anti-work. What is anti-work? And this is from a channel, kind of a smaller channel called Alki, A-L-K-I. So go check him out or her or whoever. I haven't watched any of these videos per Nightcap tradition. Oh. What is anti-work?
2018, I quit my awful MBA job and started reading about socialism on Reddit. I frequented subreddits like r/breadtube and r/anarchism to cure my then
This is a very low video. We're going to have to hit the old boost. Have to hit the old booster. I think we're going to have a choice.
Insatiable interest in anti-capitalism. I don't recall when I discovered r/anti-work, but I do remember spending hours there reading questions and facts about anti-work. After becoming an anarchist, I found new value in this.
What's up, Prophet? Prophet says, thank God for albuterol. There we go. Otherwise, who knows how I'd be able to smoke all this pot, all this marijuana.
Reddit in the form of a space to meet other anarchists and discuss anti-capitalism, anti-work, and other related topics. At least, this was the case until a few months ago when I noticed that this subreddit has a problem. r/anti-work is no longer anti-work. Many of you from r/anti-work are going to stop watching the video, dislike it, and write a comment about why I'm wrong based on that one sentence, but I ask that you have an open mind. Give me a chance to explain what anti-work is and explain the problem with r/anti-work. Anti-work is an ideology that opposes work and seeks to abolish it. Work is involuntary and harmful to ourselves. It is unnecessary labor that people are coerced to do instead of living their lives, and therefore we should abolish it. A common reaction to these statements is that work is necessary for society to function, because most people would define work as any activity.
But no, it's not. You just got to slow down, people. You just got to slow down. We got to go back to a simpler time. To a simpler time. I assume that's kind of what the gist is, just from even hearing this opening salvo here.
Involving mental or physical effort done in order to achieve a purpose or result. This isn't what we mean by work. We define work as, to quote Bob Black, forced labor, that is, compulsory production. Work is production enforced by economic or political means, by the carrot or the stick. The carrot is just a stick by other means. But not all creation is work. Work is never done for its own sake. It's done on account of some product or output that the worker, or more often somebody else, gets out of it. To put it another way, work is
like one of those movements that requires you to like redefine and re-explain very common vernacular. You know what I mean? So many of these movements do this. It reminds me a lot of like defund the police. And then you'd question, be like, well, why would you want to do that? Isn't crime going to go on the rise? You know, no matter how we all feel about police, there is a deterrent aspect to what the police offer society. And like, and then everybody be like, well, we don't mean literally defund the police. We just mean like, you know, make them better. Well, then you should find a new word. You should find a new way to explain it so it's not confusing. So we don't have to get into these like these semantic, pedantic debates about the meanings of basic words. It's very frustrating. It's kind of stupid and counterproductive in my opinion.
Labor or effort that we are forced to do in order to survive within our current economic system, which is capitalism. When you expend effort at work for wages so that you can afford to buy food, pay rent, and maybe have health care, you are doing work, and that work is coerced by the artificially created threat of starvation, houselessness, and sickness by the powers that be, the state, the police, your landlord, and so on. It's for this.
Prophet says, funny, if these motherfuckers were busy working, they wouldn't have all day to sit around doing David Pakman dictionary definitions. And also, you would find parity with people. A lot of people would agree with you. They'd be like, oh, I mean, what is the difference? Is this like just a modern kind of union movement, basically? For workers' rights, you don't want to be mistreated. You want a fair wage, or is it deeper than that? Because it depends. I think it depends on who you like ask about it. That's what it seems like to me. It doesn't seem like there's a coherent thing. There's just a bunch of different concepts of what this movement represents, and they don't all agree. Just like defund the police, just like, sock dems, communists.
This reason that work cannot be abolished without abolishing capitalism, and why anti-work is anti-capitalist. This is in contrast to any effort we do voluntarily for our own reasons. This video is an example of that. I don't make YouTube videos to make money to pay rent or buy food. I make them because
Solid Zoobox numbers. This guy's doing very solid Zoobox numbers, okay? You're welcome, Alki. You're welcome.
I love talking about topics that interest me. This is a basic explanation of anti-work and work versus labor or effort that I think many who adhere to anti-work would agree with. But please be aware that there is a lot more to anti-work than what I have just explained. If you're interested in learning more, some resources can be found in the description below, as well as our anti-work sidebar.
And then they'll cite some like little tribe, some village in the somewhere in a jungle, and be like, they made it work. Prophet says, but at the end of the day, work must be done. So by who? Not by my soft middle class ass. I read Hegel. Hagbert says, well, he can have a job in the party. Yeah, I know. Don't you love that? That's also another thing that's hysterical. Whenever these kids are polled, oh, when the revolution comes, like, what are you going to do afterwards? What are you going to do? I'm going to be a painter. I'm going to be a singer. I'm going to be a writer. It's like, you're going to be a worker. You're going to be in a factory. That's where you're going to be, buddy old pal.
Our anti-work is overwhelmingly no longer anti-work because of the content that dominates the sub and the conclusion that people draw from said content. It is now a place for people, mainly liberals, to post text messages of them quitting their job, stories about dreadful pay and working conditions, and to declare random, unorganized strikes or labor action. Now, liberals creating threads about bad work experiences, recognizing exploitation from bosses, and removing themselves from that sort of work environment is a good thing in moderation. I do want liberals or progressives on the sub. It was in threads like those where they were introduced to explanations of anti-work by anarchists, a starting point that could result in them or someone else reading the thread eventually embracing anti-capitalism and anti-work. No, these posts wouldn't be a problem if they weren't the vast majority of what's posted, and if it wasn't for the conclusion that people are seemingly drawing from these threads. That anti-work is about refusing to work until we have a nice boss, fair wages, and good working conditions, because we would happily work.
Yeah, it's called a union. We've done this before. Generally, I mean, how do you ensure that without some kind of apparatus, you know? Hagbert says they're all going to work in the lithium and bauxite mines. Yeah, do you think anybody's going to want their quality of life to go down when Dear Leader takes over? Whoever that may be. Prophet says these are the same kids who tried to plant root vegetables in 3 inches of mulch at the park in the Chaz. Their corpses won't even have any usable loot.
Work under those conditions. That's not anti-work, that's pro-work. Anti-work isn't about nice bosses, it's about no bosses. Anti-work isn't about fair wages, it's about abolishing the wage system. Anti-work isn't about good working conditions, it's about abolishing work because we hate work. Well, don't expect everyone on our...
That's what happens when you have like a loose definition of whatever your movement is, whatever your cause is. Everybody who has any petty grievance with anything that's ever happened to them gets to jump in and project that onto your movement. And then at some point, it becomes about nothing. I think we actually saw that a lot while we were watching a lot of the vegans go at it, right? Watching a lot of the discussions and debates that we watched over the past week and a half, their movements become just about everything. It becomes all-encompassing. And it dilutes itself. It dilutes its own purpose or ability to be effective.
To work to reach this conclusion overnight or even ever. When the narrative of the sub is dominated by people who say that anti-work isn't about anti-work, I think that's a problem. Instead of seeing anarchist ideas, new visitors will only see liberal misconceptions of an anarchist term and walk away no closer to anarchism or anti-capitalism than when they entered. The aforementioned misconception of anti-work stems from people who don't understand anti-work, don't understand what we mean by work, and have misconceptions about how anti-work relates to organized labor. And it's here I want to...
Don't call it fucking anti-work then. People don't understand what we mean when we say work. I wonder why. It's like you're shooting yourself in the foot.
To touch on that last point. Come on now, I know my regular viewers didn't think I wasn't going to talk about labor in this video. The video How Anti-Work Could Save the Working World by Saunders Studios, which has nearly 9,000 views at the time of recording.
How anti-work could save the working world.
It's a perfect example of equating anti-work with organized labor. Here, Sonder attempts to explain the history of anti-work and how it could be used today to save the working class, but instead talks about strikes in the labor movement during the 1930s. In his follow-up video titled How to Anti-Work, Sonder is talking less about—
it just seems like a world-weary traveler. A guy who's probably been working for at least, what, like 5-6 years? Probably has a lot of experience, right? Prof says, political theory based off of growing up with fully stocked shelves at Target. Fucking Pop-Tart people.
about how to do anti-work and more about organized labor action in relation to a general strike, specifically the Black Friday blackout general strike thing, which I'll touch on in a moment. And I just want to say I'm not trying to pick on Sonder here, because you see this kind of stuff on our anti-work too. People applying the term anti-work to organized labor action, namely strikes. These are not the same thing. The John Deere strike and Kellogg strike have nothing to do with anti-work.
Yeah, because it'd be crazy, because they might be effective to a certain degree. You know, it's not some nebulous bullshit that you guys are like to go on a Reddit sub and jerk each other off. Oh, it's like the antinatalists.
The goal of anti-work is the abolition of work, while organized labor or unions are—
Remember, guys, work isn't work. Work is just things that you don't want to do. So if you're doing something that requires labor that you enjoy, well, that's not work.
Possible method to achieve that goal in some circumstances. If you look at the mainstream labor movement and unions like the UAW or BCTGM, they believe in negotiating with bosses for better pay and benefits, a process known as collective bargaining. When bosses refuse to negotiate fairly and a contract runs out, the workers may go out on strike to put pressure on them to agree to their demands of a fair contract. All of this is generally good, but there's a huge problem. Those unions don't want to abolish capitalism. They believe that employers and workers have common interests. They are pro-work. They are so pro-work.
So it's just another way to launder socialism or communism into the zeitgeist. Get disaffected people, get people that are unhappy with their jobs, unhappy being mistreated, which happens. It happens all the time, especially in the service industry, right? Those jobs suck, and you are often mistreated, often asked to dig a little bit deeper. Can't you just ruin your life and have no social life, no home life, no family life, so you can come here and stock a shelf? It's fucking irritating. I know. I've worked plenty of those jobs. Prophet says it's like the anti-Nephili say. Say that again. The anti-Nephalehi. Only in the Book of Mormon, folks. Also, every time Nico said folks, I wanted to drop him from the top rope. Yeah, exactly. Hagbert says folks with uterus.
In fact, that they agree to no strike clauses, restricting workers' right to strike for the duration of the collective bargaining agreement. Compare that to the radical labor movement with unions like mine, the industrial workers of the world. The IWW seeks to create rank-and-file run unions at every workplace in the short term and believes in the abolition of the wage system and collective ownership of the means of production in the long term. We believe that the working class and the employing class have nothing in common. We're generally anti-work, though the IWW rejects all political labels. Whether you're anti-work or not, you should organize your workplace. The IWW offers organizer training 101 to anyone who wants to learn how to form a solidarity or rank-and-file run union, and I encourage everyone watching this video to take it. About organized labor action and declaring strikes on Reddit. Stop doing that. Actions like the McDonald's strikes, which are really—
Why? Why would you care? If it's anything that would improve the conditions, they just don't want people fucking up their subreddit. Too many people in there talking about things that guys like this, the armchair philosophers, pseudo-intellectuals, well, they can't jerk each other off about semantic terms. They can't do that anymore. They can't have their own insular little world with their own little private language. They can't have that anymore. And it disturbs them. Hey, what's up, Tarami? Hey.
Boycotts, since they haven't been organized by McDonald's workers, are slacktivism and have little if any effect. Declaring fake general strikes online like the Black Friday blackout—
They call it black or slacktivism. So I assume like hashtag warriors, etc. What are you guys doing in r/anti-work? What are you guys doing? Are you just like encouraging people to quit their jobs? I don't know. Prof says white people aren't worth saving.
Is even less effective because those actions never get organized. I know some will say that the blackout contributed to the downturn on Black Friday, but that seems highly unlikely. And no, I'm not just basing that on media reports, I'm basing that on the posts here asking what happened and the lack of response to them. Take organizer training and learn how to organize effective direct action that will actually get the better pay and working conditions you desire. Fake general strikes are a distraction from effective organizing. I think the labor misconceptions and fake actions have played a large role in contributing to the problem with our anti-work, so labor resources are linked below. As the sub has continued to grow, misconceptions of anti-work have spread throughout the subreddit and beyond it, essentially becoming the default position. Today, when fellow anarchists on our anti-work attempt to educate people about anti-work and correctly inform them that the subreddit is anarchic, they are more often than not met with vitriol. Productive discussions about anti-work are somewhat difficult to find and appear to have been largely drowned out or disappeared because of the hostility. I've made multiple attempts to strike up a conversation with people about anti-work, correct them on their pro-work misconception of it, and explain how it relates to socialism or anarchism. Most of these—
Yeah, see, it's just these same fucking things that crop up again and again and again. They're like, well, you know, when we called it this, it has a negative connotation, so let's rebrand it. Let's rebrand it. And these people live in a fucking fantasy world if they think that socialism or communism has anything to do with the utopia that they're fucking talking about. That's not how it would be. Somebody's still got to work. Somebody's going to still have to do things they don't like doing. And then it becomes relative. It becomes debatable. Well, what is worth doing? What do we really need? Again, kind of like vegans when they say, like, well, you don't have to eat animal products. You don't have to eat them. You know, you can survive. You can survive without them. Sure, you can survive. But at what quality of life? The same question should be asked to these people. At what quality of life are you expecting on the other side of this movement?
Conversations were negative, with the other person claiming that anti-work isn't about abolishing work or anti-capitalism, and unsurprisingly repeating all the anti-socialist arguments liberals normally give. They were only interested in the general misconception of anti-work because that's what nearly everyone else on the subreddit is saying. Of course, not every single thread or interaction is like this on the subreddit. I've had positive conversations with people new to the sub about anarchism and organized labor. But the majority of anti-capitalist conversations don't seem to follow this trend because of the current demographics of the subreddit and how they define anti-work.
Uh-oh. We got centrists in here. We got conservatives in here. We got sock dem progressives in here. Oh, shit. See, yeah, the sock dem progressives, you got to watch out for those people. These are the people you got to watch out for. They will infest every movement that exists and impose their will. That seems like what happens, right? You can even just see that in broadly speaking, and just basic, basic American politics.
Our anti-works problem matters because we lost an online anarchist and more generally anti-capitalist space. Our anti-work is no longer really a subreddit for anarchists and potential anti-capitalists to congregate, discuss, and educate people about anti-work and other anarchist ideas. It's become a place severely lacking in anarchist content and often hostile to the very ideas it was created to spread. Meanwhile, the term anti-work has been co-opted and divorced from its original meaning, making it more difficult to introduce people to the idea.
Yeah, I think if you're in The Guardian and somebody's ready to quit your job, come and join me in the anti-work movement. Person with a job writing for The Guardian.
It's an incredibly disappointing but unsurprising development to see for the growing subreddit. So how do we fix our anti-work? As much as I like the idea of the creation of a sister sub,
it's like, I don't know how else to say it, guys, but we're going to have to start getting people to embrace non-existence by any means necessary. There we go. Hagbert says, so, how does this person support themselves? I'm curious. Oh, he's probably like a NEET. He lives in his mom's house. I don't know. They don't ever disclose this. He says he does YouTube for pleasure, not for money. So I don't know. Prophet says anarchists by and large exist off their own farts and some weird act of fission. Trami says, is he bitching about Reddit being a cesspool? How observant. Yeah, right.
sub while leaving this sub as anti-work, I think it's highly unlikely that will happen. But I don't think all is lost either. When the mod started limiting text message screenshots to Sunday, I noticed an improvement in the subreddit, so perhaps small solutions like that might be the trick. Since 85% of people found this subreddit in the past year according to the survey, there should be some sort of disclaimer in the form of a pinned post that anti-work is an anti-capitalist and anarchist concept. A pinned post is best because over 80% of people use our anti-work on mobile according to the survey and can't see the sidebar. It's at least a place to start. The only thing we can really do is keep posting and educating those who are moving left. There's still a lot of great folks doing that, even if they are mostly buried by other posts. Perhaps in time, the sub will balance out and become a space to educate people about anti-work again.
But see, here's the thing, and this is the same thing I would say with like anti-work, anarchists. They're just like, they can recognize problems. They're good at recognizing problems. They're not good at offering any type of practical or pragmatic solutions. And I know about anarchism a little bit because, you know, I've spent a lot of time over the years, you know, when you start flirting with libertarianism and stuff like that. Like I watched a lot of debates, I read a lot of books, I listened to a lot of lectures, and they very rarely ever like produce an actual workable system on the other side of it. They're just like, we'll figure it out. You know? And hey, if that's your cause, if that's how you want to put it, I guess good for you. At least that's something. At least they could admit that. But Jesus Christ, it doesn't. That's why it's so hard to like really engage with this stuff. Big Paul says, "Yo, hello from DC. What's up, Big Paul?" Travis says, "Got to gatekeep this public space of discussion." Yeah, I know.
The new people begin to embrace socialism. For those watching who aren't anti-capitalist and have made it this far, first off, thank you for watching to this point.
You're
Second,
welcome.
please understand that anti-work is an anarchist concept, and that our anti-work is an anti-capitalist subreddit. You should recognize that and at least be open to anti-capitalist ideas and discussions there. We understand that many of you are at different political stages and that the processes of rejecting capitalism is different for everyone. Most of us...
I read a book when I was 14, and I was like, oh...
went down a similar path because of bad work experiences too. I know I did. But if you're not open to critiques of capitalism and only want to complain about work or get better wages and nicer bosses, then you're not anti-work, and there are better places for you to post that kind of content. Thanks for watching. This was a very different video from the type I normally make, but I thought it was worth making.
It's like normally I just make regular commie videos. This was about Reddit.
The comment section is going to be beshism. My intention was never to make a video that would respond to most people on the sub. However, seeing as how they will eventually find this video anyway, I decided to include some information for them. As stated earlier, there are resources in the description below for anyone interested in learning more about the topics I discussed here and then some.
Okay.
I suggest you check out my channel if you're interested in videos about organized labor, including general strikes. Speaking of, I'm still working on the general strike series and the last 2 videos will come out sometime next year.
Oh, that's so nice. I'm so glad that he's still working. He's working on something. Oh boy. So this is a video called "It's Not Anti-Work. It's not an anti-work movement. It's an anti-employee movement." This is from, what is the channel name on this thing? This is from Work It Daily. Looks like it used to be a TikTok video. How exciting. How wonderful. Travis is a common thread in our viewings, so much that's based on destruction rather than creation. Yeah, I was actually, just Big Paul and I were just chatting one night, and he's just like, yeah, all these things we've been looking into kind of like circle the same ideas, the same principle. They presuppose the same thing. And a lot of it deals with like apathy and nihilism to a certain degree. And this kind of all started, this journey started like going into this stuff with like antinatalism. Well, that's what I meant. The anti-work, antinatalism, veganism, they all have these things in common where they're like eugenicists, and they kind of believe, they wouldn't say it. They'd be hard pressed to say it. Yeah, they just think that most people shouldn't exist. Seems like what's at the bottom of it, because the more people that exist, the more resources are required, the more work you're going to have to do in the case of the anti-work movement. They don't like that. They ain't down with that. All right, let's see what this person's got to say. Let's see what they got to say.
So Business Insider just did this article on the rise of the anti-work movement. And now Goldman Sachs is saying that this could be a major long risk factor to the labor force participation. And then Forbes comes out saying, hey, anti-work movement is a sign there's something rotten in the workplace. So while I think it is great that corporate America is finally waking up to the fact that something is really wrong, I hate the term anti-work movement because it isn't that people are against working.
Oh no, this is one of these social progressives that they were talking about in that other video. These people that come in and they muddy the waters. They muddy the waters. They don't let these people have their space, have their places to voice their opinions.
And I think a lot of people are going to spin the anti-work movement as being lazy. This is an anti-employee movement, meaning people are done with being employees. They don't want to be held hostage by golden handcuffs.
Okay, if that's what you were to say, if that's how you were to put it, be like, okay, this is an anti working for people that you don't want to work for. I can at least understand that. I can at least get behind that to a certain degree. Then you shouldn't call it anti-work. Like she said, that's a fucking stupid name. Like defund the police. If it doesn't mean what it seems like it means, then what are you doing? Tarami says they can't even agree on which 10% they have to execute to make this work. Probably more than that.
These days, doing a job because of the paycheck and having to do whatever the employer says feels like, again, it's like a bribe. It's like you're held hostage, and people are just so unhappy with feeling that way. The funny thing is hundreds of years ago, you worked for yourself. You were
and then you take that feeling and then you try to create something for yourself. Not everybody is equipped for that, though. Most people are not equipped to do that. Psychologically, financially, all of those things. So you need to be able to do something in the interim. Sometimes that means working for other people. Sometimes that means helping a company just by virtue of doing a good job for them. Then you become valuable and then you find purpose.
Business of one. I don't know if you can see my sign back there that my clients gave me, but I say this all the time. When you stop thinking like an employee and you start thinking like a business of one, then it doesn't matter if you're doing contract work, full-time work, whatever kind of work. You go into it with a mindset that, hey, we're business partners and we'll agree upon something. And when it starts to not work for me, I'm going to step back and I'm going to figure out what it takes to make it still work for me. And either I'll stay here or I'll move on. That is why I need to call it the anti-employee movement. I think being an employee is dead, done, gone. We are all business.
Yeah, it's not anti-employee. It's anti-employee mindset. The mindset that makes people feel that way, where they don't take agency or ownership over their own time and their own physical resources, their labor. It's okay to ask for better working conditions. It's okay to push back when something wrong is happening. More people should be empowered to do that. But that's not really what these people are talking about. So this right here, we're watching one of these co-opters. This woman is a co-opter. She wants to go in to this subreddit and tell these people that their conceptualization of anti-work is wrong. Trami says, you did not work for yourself. The pioneers on the frontiers of America maybe did, but everyone else had lords already. Yeah, we've always had systems like this. Always. Every culture. Prophet says, hundreds of years ago, you worked for yourself. What, where, and when? Yeah, because she just thinks she has this like pie in the sky view. Like, well, everybody had a farm. Everybody grew their own crops. And if you have your own food and you have a house, well, then you've worked for yourself. But it's like, well, where did that house come from? Where did that land come from? Like, how far back do we need to go? How far back do we need to go? It requires people to take risk to produce things. That's the truth. Maybe people don't like that. I don't know. But if somebody has to put down the fucking money or buy the land, buy the property, start a business, do whatever for anything to happen. Because not everybody wants to do that.
Businesses of one. When we adopt that mindset and we go at it, we will rebuild the working relationship because people do want to work. They just want to feel respected. They want to have equal partnership. And that's what's been missing all this while. And if you believe me and you support me on this, please like this, share it with somebody you know, and follow me here because I'm
Trami says, to nomadic times, when work maybe didn't exist in the sense we use it today at all. Yes, I think, yeah, all the way back. Let's go all the way back.
all about teaching people to follow the anti-employee movement and figuring out how to embrace their business of one and get happy. And that's what we do every single day here on TikTok, okay? Go get them.
Go get them, y'all. Out here on TikTok, spreading that message. I think it's called the anti-work ethic on screen. How to escape your job. Well, all right then. They got closed captions. They do.
And I don't ever want to work one more day in my entire life.
Have you ever felt like you're wasting your single precious life doing a job you hate? Right now, millions of U.S. workers are quitting their jobs in the Great Resignation. After the COVID-19
Yeah, that's another thing they're calling it, the Great Resignation, because COVID-19 exposed to a lot of people that they don't really want to work their shitty jobs. Even though like the stimulus wasn't crazy, it wasn't anything like that, but there are parts of the world, because so much of like popular media is driven by metropolitan areas. Very like deep blue areas. And a lot of those people have had to deal with the pandemic in ways that other places, parts of the country, at least in the United States, haven't had to. So I live in South Carolina. The pandemic has, functionally, other than any state program, has been over for a year, if not more. It's done. It's over with. Everybody goes about their lives pretty normal. Pretty average existence, unless you have to deal with anything with a hospital or a school or the DMV. Those things, they stayed closed forever. But most places, they just kind of went about their life. At some point, they're just like, we can't do this. So when these people talk about like this perspective, the Great Resignation, they're talking about people that have had things taken from them, that have been put out of work forcefully by the government, with no support by the government either. And those people, at some point, when you're just ripped back and forth, they just say, fuck it. Fuck it. You're not here for me. You're not here to help produce anything. It's whatever. Hagbert says, not here. They're still hyper spurgy. Yeah, I know. I think where you live. Yeah, they definitely are. Yeah. I thank God every day. There's still a few stores that have signs that are just like, mask required. I would say 80% of the people that go there don't wear them. And the people that are wearing them are wearing those fucking cloth masks that don't do almost nothing. Almost not worth even wearing.
Pandemic sparked a mass reevaluation of priorities, but on screen, we've gravitated for decades towards characters who express a philosophy of life that's an alternative to capitalism's assumptions.
We don't have a lot of time on this earth. We weren't meant to spend it this way, filling out useless forms and listening to 8 different bosses drone on about mission statements.
These anti-work characters riot against unlivable working conditions, challenge irresponsible companies that care only about making a profit, refuse to acquiesce to senseless labor, call out parasitic consumer culture, use the jobs that are exploiting them to their own advantage, reveal the evils of a system based on capital, and won't give up their principles or identity for the workplace.
If given a choice between doing something and nothing, I'd choose to do nothing. But I will do something if it helps someone else do nothing. I'd work all night if it meant nothing got done.
Being anti-work...
I like how they try to turn Ron Swanson into like some sort of socialist figure. Oh, isn't that reappropriation? The man's obviously a libertarian. Come on now.
So wait, are you telling me you sell slave labor to companies over the phone?
The company that hires Cassius Green as a telemarketer runs an initiative called Worry Free, which sells a barely disguised form of slavery as a wonderful career opportunity that takes all the anxiety out of life.
You're guaranteed employment and housing for life. Stop worrying and get worry free.
Yeah, but isn't this just communism? Isn't this their end game? Isn't this the end game for a lot of these people? Is to actually have this very system. It's like you don't got to worry about food. You don't got to be worried about housing. They're also just describing China in a lot of cases.
In 1999's Office Space, Peter's friend, who's a construction worker, is less mentally tortured than Peter. In the end, Peter also ends up working construction and enjoys that manual.
Yeah, but he's also like kind of a moron. He's also kind of like an idiot. Truthfully, truth be told.
Labor allows him to actually see the product of his work. But ultimately, both bad jobs and bullshit jobs compromise employees' humanity. In Sorry to Bother You, the idea of workers being robbed of their humanity takes an absurd turn to the literal.
A chemical change to make humans stronger, more obedient, more durable, and therefore more efficient and profitable.
As Bukowski wrote, what hurts is the steadily diminishing humanity of those fighting to hold jobs they don't want. But
he must have said that in between beating the shit out of his wife or his girlfriends. He must have said that in between like being a drunk and beating up his girlfriends, even on tape. You should check out the Bukowski documentary. There's a documentary about him. I think it was like the early 2000s came out. 1000%. He's just beating the shit out of his girlfriends. Hagbert says, I think I could make that happen with $1 million.
But fear the alternative worse. People simply empty out. They are bodies with fearful and obedient minds. These lines mirror the classic visual aesthetic we see in cinema about modern work, such as dystopian imagery of rows upon rows of deadened, soulless drones toiling away mindlessly because thinking would make their situation unbearable. In Charlie Chaplin's Modern Times, the hero struggles to survive in a newly industrialized world. At his job, the workers move in sync with the machines they're operating, like they're one and the same thing. The same is true of 1927's Metropolis, in which the workers move in sync with the machinery in a weird dance, as if they're part of the city's infrastructure. In the later half of the 20th century, films about office jobs focus on the imagery of the cubicle as a visual metaphor for the way modern work destroys individuality.
Human beings were not meant to sit in little cubicles staring at computer screens all day.
Every human is shut into a tiny box that is just like every other box, and rows of them stretch towards the horizon. Describing the employees of such jobs, Bukowski writes, the color leaves the eye, the voice becomes ugly, and the body, the hair, the fingernails. The color palette of movies about contemporary office jobs echoes this, featuring muted, desaturated gray or bluish tones. The unflattering fluorescent light makes the characters' features ugly and sickly looking. Just as the workers of early industrial jobs resemble cogs in the machines they operate, the workers of office jobs resemble the weak, flickering gray screens they stare at.
No, I wouldn't say I have a passion for it.
Yeah, they all look like vegans. They all look like vegans. All right, that's enough of that. That's enough of that. I can't do it. I can't do it anymore. Hagbert says the CCP gave Fight Club a new happy ending. I am just happy that Tyler found the help he needed. I'm just happy he found it, you know? So this is not, speaking of the CCP, I got this video about China's anti-work movement called Lying Flat. I am not familiar with this, but let's check it out. Apparently in China, they're also rebelling. Or those that are still alive, not being shot or welded into their houses or whatever. So let's see what this guy's got to say.
It's no secret that anti-work in the United States is becoming really, really popular.
My God, we just got quiet videos. I don't know if it's my computer. It's probably OBS being a dick.
Popular. Anti-work is a movement and also a subreddit. The subreddit has over 1.6 million people following it. It's the concept that work is not very fair anymore. Not a fair handshake. That people are asked to do too much and get too little in return. That employers don't care about the employees, the hours they work, and the suffering they do. It's all about the bottom line and making the rich richer and not really sharing it.
Oh, no fucking way. Thank you, Brainiac. Trami says, taking down the system involves making thousands of people unemployed, apparently. Oh, we don't need to deal with the displacement of workers or entire industries of people. Just don't do it because it's wrong.
Now, this is an interesting idea. And the fact that it's getting a lot of popularity behind it adds a lot of credibility to it. It's actually grown so much at this point that Goldman Sachs has viewed it as a long-term risk. Now, up until now, I always thought this was a United States issue. I live in the USA, and, wealth inequality is a problem here. It's more of a problem in the United States than it is in Europe. However, I was wrong. I was very, very wrong. Today, I want to talk to you about another anti-work-like movement.
Trami says, or it's an indication that people will complain about the hand they've been dealt in life, no matter what. But I don't know. No, I think everybody. It's just baked into the cake of the human experience. We always want more. We always want better. That's a real thing, right? And we will always find a way, especially in times of opulence. We will find something to complain about, that something is wrong. We're not encouraged to appreciate the things that we have. We're only told, but can't you have more? Couldn't it be better? Shouldn't people just give you shit? I would like to encourage people, like, even if that was, that's the paradigm. Oh, you want more, you want better. How do you make that work for yourself? How do you do that? Like, that's like we watched that TikTok lady. Like, that's kind of what she was getting at. Like, this idea that, like, know your rights, know what you're supposed to be doing, know how to be better. At least that's, like, positive. At least it goes in a positive direction.
A different country. A country I didn't expect to see this in. China. China has its own anti-work movement over there, but it's a little different. Every movement is a little different, with different ideas, different philosophies, and different complaints. But I will say the fundamental root is always the same. Work. People not getting a fair pay for what they have to do. Not having the quality of life that they feel like they deserve for what the amount of time and effort, blood, sweat, and tears they put into what they do. Now, China is the country having the issue here. And it's not necessarily a surprise. China has a concept called the 996. 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week. That's how many hours you should be working. That's 72 hours if you want to do the math. 72 hours a week. And this has actually been echoed by CEOs like Jack Ma, founder of Alibaba. This idea of working hard to get what you want is the way forward. However,
yeah, and some people can. Some people can thrive in that kind of system. I mean, I do not endorse the 996 because I do think that would be a little much for the average person, right? Because that is about productivity. That's about what you produce for a company. That seems a little much, right? But that is not reflective of most people's lives, I would say. Even people that don't like what they're doing. Shit, I remember I worked briefly as a pipeliner. That was definitely the way. That was definitely the way. It actually was worse than that. It was like 4:30 in the morning till 12:30 at night. And you got like a hot 4 hours of sleep, and then you woke up and you did it all over again. That's some miserable shit. But you're paid well, so you don't really care. Prophet says 9 to 9, 6 days a week. These people are trying to keep up with Butcher Pete or something. I know, because you're paying the cost of like working for yourself. The actual toil. And I hope that it produces something for yourself and for your family. That kind of effort and work. And that's what it takes. But that's what it takes when you actually want to do something for yourself. This is not what these people are talking about. These people are talking about not doing anything and being given things. Trami says, so what's the alternative to working hard? I'm not suggesting there's basically slavery in a lot of places, but how much is the correct amount of work in a week? That's a good question. And obviously it's different for everybody, and it depends what you want out of life.
People started getting sick of it. And thus we have to go to an online blog post from Luo Haozong back in April 2021. This blog post in English was titled, "Lying Flat is Justice." and lying flat, Tongping, is this idea of, hey, you should not be trying to stand rigid, working hard, working long hours, working the 996. Because when you stand up, you're growing. You get harvested. You get cut down. Somebody takes all of your work, this growth, and takes it for themselves. Just like a plant. But if you were lying flat to the ground, and that sickle from above comes to cut down all of your growth, well, you're lying flat. You dodge the sickle. You get to continue your life unencumbered. Like stolen. You're not stolen from. The people above were not able to take from you. In the case of Liu Haozong, what he did is he quit his factory job and went back home and just started working odd jobs, valuing his time, doing what he wanted. He just fed himself and moved on. Now, this post, Lying Flat was Justice, done back in April 2021, got a lot of traction. It was very popular. To the point where the
very, very popular where? The Chinese government come and find this guy? Because they probably would. Trump says, get to continue your life lying down at least. He should be well rested.
Chinese Communist Party had to censor it. They had to have Chinese communist officials and media sources come out and say, this is evil and wrong. The Communist Party had to go so far as to remove online merchandise that had the words saying lying flat and other merchandise supporting this idea. That's insane. It's fascinating. There's a popular slogan for the movement as well. I think that summarizes it very, very nicely. Don't buy property. Don't buy a car. Don't get married. Don't have children. And don't consume.
There it is. That's the end game. Subsist. Subsist. Do as little as humanly possible to exist. Trump says, so far, they took down a Redbubble store.
This rejection of consumerism kind of caught me off guard. Why? I used to live in China. While Beijing and Shanghai have plenty of beautiful districts with tons of people with tons of money, there was still a lot of poverty, both in the cities and in the countryside of China. However, we're seeing the popularity of lying flat is not just a city or two or some middle class people. The reason this is getting shut down is because it is popular all around the country. And people are waking up to this idea that the consumerism isn't worth it anymore. That the 996 isn't worth it. That the deal of getting more stuff isn't worth it in favor of living a life you want.
Yeah, if that's the life you want. If you want to live a life of just being like kind of subsisting and hanging out, and I suppose there's a way you could make that happen. Sure. I mean, your quality of life, your quality of living, relatively speaking, will go down. But yeah, sure, you can waste away in reading manga and jerking off and taking walks. Sure, why not?
The Chinese government is terrified of this because it goes against this idea of innovation, pushing forward, working hard so that China can get ahead. But people are looking at that and saying, okay, the Chinese government does well. But what about me? I just keep getting harvested. I am not going anywhere. I'm not getting to spend time with family and friends. I'm not getting time to explore hobbies. I just work my 9 to 9, 6 days a week, slaving away in a factory. But like, is that what life's all about? Is this sacrifice really worth it for China? But what about me? Shouldn't I work for me? And shouldn't I get to do what I want? To the point where this slogan, right? Don't buy a property. Don't need to save for a house. Don't get a car. Don't even get married. Don't have kids. Just don't consume.
Yeah, just opt out of life. Opt out of the system.
Be totally free. Reject the system in its entirety. And just go live your life. The fact that this is going on in China, a developing nation, to me is setting off alarm bells. Something is wrong right now in the world. United States, when I read about anti-work in the United States and started following the subreddit, I looked at it and said, okay, we got some late stage capitalism going on. United States, we've had a run of wealth inequality. Maybe we need to pushing it in a bit, do a little bit more for the common person. But this is becoming a worldwide thing. And China is nowhere near developed, nowhere near what I would call late-stage capitalism. Something is fundamentally wrong right now in the world with the trade-off between work, time, and money. Somewhere.
Yeah, because China is more akin to fascism, which is the merging of government and corporation. So that's probably why you see that, buddy.
Somewhere along the way, the world's starting to feel like they're not getting a fair handshake. This is alarming, and I have a feeling it's only going to get worse from here. If you liked today's video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe below.
Oh, that's okay. I won't be subscribing to you. So this next video is called Fox News Anti-Work Interview, What the Left Can Learn. So I think this is a TYT video. It's like an analysis of that guy going on that program.
Person who operates this anti-work.
Oh my God, like what is going I think OBS is being an asshole and not
group, Doreen Ford. All right, so Doreen, why do you like the idea of being home, not working, but still getting paid by corporate America? So Doreen, you're not being forced to work. This isn't slave labor. You've applied for a job. You've agreed to the terms and conditions of the employment. And, you know, you can walk away from that job at any time and quit. So what do you think is like a good work day? How many hours is you know, a solid work day in your ideal society? What do you do, Doreen?
I'm a dog walker.
A dog walker. Okay.
Yes.
And how
so
how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
Sure, I'm 30.
You're 30. Okay. And is there something you want to do besides being a dog walker? Do you aspire to do anything more than dog walking, or is that kind of your pinnacle?
So Fox News did this interview with one of the moderators from the r/antiwork subreddit. Now for starters, I just want to say that this person didn't really say anything that was like out there. It's clear at this point that the Fox host was just being needlessly mean to them. Because like, for example, this person is a
needlessly mean by asking them basic questions.
Dog walker. Dog walking is a perfectly fine job. In fact, it's actually like a real job that involves like a ton of physical labor, and managing dogs can be a lot. It can be very stressful. Meanwhile, Jesse Waters is a Fox News host who's making tons of money and has an entire team of professionals that are there to make him look good, both in terms of writers and in terms of people like hair and makeup. Their whole job is just to make sure that Jesse Waters looks good on camera and sounds good, no matter what he's saying. So him coming after this person for dog walking when he's like a news host, like, come on, buddy. But there are really two big points that I think are important to take away from this interview. The first one is understanding why Fox News invites people onto their show, especially why they invite left-wingers onto their show. Basically, the left-wingers they invite on their show end up falling into one of three categories. The first category are
retarded.
Are people who are just your average person who care about the world and have some ideas about it. And Fox News responds by pulling the rug out of under their feet, attacking them as an individual, and basically talking as fast as they can and asking as many questions as possible to confuse that person and try to make them look bad. If the things that they're saying sound fine, then they just turn to attacking random characteristics of this.
Well, who's more to blame here? Who the fuck goes on to Fox News to talk to somebody of this persuasion, thinking that they're not going to be ambushed with difficult questions? Even if they're unfair. Even unfair questions. Like, how are you not, in some respect, prepared for that?
This person. And in this instance, it was attacking the fact that this person is a dog walker, which once again is a very normal job. The second category of people are people who publicly claim to be leftists and do so for the viewership and the clout, but aren't actually leftists and haven't bothered to study really any of the theory. We're talking about people who run around calling themselves leftists and spread like anti-vax propaganda or spreading like anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. These people are just incredibly grifty, and really they exist.
Is he talking about Sam Cedar or this other guy?
off of being cringe and then other people covering how cringe they are. That's how they get their attention. That's how they get the money that they earn from views. And then when those people go on Fox News, they're sort of both part of that game. Whether or not that person knows it or not, their job is to show up and be cringe so that the Fox News can say, oh, look, the left is very cringe. Sometimes the leftists that they bring on know that that's what their job is, and sometimes they're just doing that accidentally. Now, the third category are people like this.
Well, it works by you taking their dirty money. It's as easy as that. I mean, you are a millionaire funded by billionaires. That's what you are. And I'm glad you now finally jumped the bandwagon, you know, of people like Bernie Sanders and AOC. But you're not part of the solution, Mr. Carlson. You're part of the problem, actually.
They're the people who show up and never get invited ever again. Why do they never get invited ever again?
Because they made some sort of vague overtures towards something that they don't explain. Trump says, quote unquote, this is going to be a fair and unbiased interview.
Because they say the things that you're not supposed to say on Fox News. They point out the fact that these Fox News hosts are pretty much just millionaires defending billionaire. That these Fox News hosts really are just scapegoating marginalized people instead of talking about the real structural problems that exist in the United States of America. Their whole job is to distract and disorient people as to what exactly the problem is. And so if they have somebody that comes on and points that out, then they really don't want to air those interviews. And they will never invite those people on ever again. So if you do find yourself in a situation where you're randomly getting invited on a Fox News, my first advice would be to not go on. Because if they're inviting you on, that means they think that they can get something of value from you, and you should immediately...
Yeah, but everybody thinks they're smarter. Everybody thinks they're smarter, and they're going to be the one that can handle it. And also, some people just like being on TV. It's flattering. They're like, oh, I got invited on television, on cable television. Oh my goodness. We've had a rule at Zoobox for a long time, which is if anything were to ever happen, if we were to ever get in trouble for anything we were to ever say or do, we do not take media interviews. We don't do it. We don't do it.
Immediately be suspicious about that. But if you're not willing to take that advice, then at least understand that your goal when you go in should be to not get invited back, which means calling out these Fox News hosts for exactly who they are, and don't really worry about...
Hagbard says, send me on. Hagbard, I will contact you. If that day should ever arise, you will be the representative of Zoobox. We'll send you on.
Paying too much attention to the questions that they're asking you. Get your points across. Make sure that people know what you want them to hear. And then make sure that you're pointing out the grift that these Fox News hosts are doing. Of course, you're not going to get invited again, but that's okay. If you get invited to Fox News, they're not going to invite you again if you did a good job advocating for these leftist positions, as a general rule. We have to remember, especially before we criticize this person that did this interview, it is incredibly stressful.
Travis says, let's just send Hagbard and he can talk about his tools for 90 minutes. That would work. Like, listen, check this thing out. I got 6 hammers. Okay? All of them beautiful in their own way.
To be live in front of millions of people. And of course, there's a certain degree of awkwardness and uncomfortableness that happens when you're not used to being on camera, and then all of a sudden you are in front of a ton of people. So really the person that did this interview, I think did a fine job, or as fine job as anybody could do that doesn't have a ton of media training or experience. Now the second takeaway from this I think is also really important, because there are some critiques to be said about what this person said in this interview. I think there are a few points where they miss some things that you could...
Travis says, so how do you defend that racist remark you made? Hagbard, well, so I have this framing hammer.
I'd say if you had a deeper understanding of like leftist theory. And to that, I think it's this big problem in the United States where people are trapped by Cold War propaganda. A lot of Americans who consider themselves leftists actively reject the notion...
This here is a 22-ounce ball pen, good for chasing metal and some stamping.
Of studying the works of other leftist leaders in the world, because the Red Scare has led people to believe that they're just, oh, these scary, purely evil monsters, when in reality, they're human beings. And they had a lot of experience actually building states that were built off of leftist principles. So it makes sense to study the writings of people like Lenin and Mao, to study the history of Fidel Castro and Thomas Sankara, and understand why they said what they said, and what the general structures of the theory are. So when somebody comes up to you and asks you, well, what is the...
My fucking God. Go read a bunch of propaganda and then, take away, oh, wow, well, maybe what they're saying is okay. Now that I'm so far removed from it, I can't possibly conceptualize the pain that those things caused. Oh, well, yeah, it makes a lot of sense, I saw somebody, there was a post that somebody made, I think it might have been on Twitter or something, and they're like 100 million dead from communism, and...
the ideal amount of work that we should be doing in society. You can reply with, well, from each according to their ability, to each according to their need, which means that our working hours should really be determined by ourselves and our own level of comfort and ability.
Wow. This is on TYT Network. They've just gone full commie over there. Wow. Hagbert says, bird eat crop, kill all bird.
And that we should make sure that everybody has their basic necessities taken care of, no matter how much or how little work they're capable of. And you can see from that how just having a little bit...
Define capable. Define capable, buddy. Drama says, Sean is impressed. Well, I'm impressed that it's just out there like this, honestly. Usually people kind of like, hide their cards a little bit better.
Of Marxist theory can really help your arguments for yourself. Even if you're not a Marxist, understanding the theory is important to understanding these ideas more broadly. So to all the people who have been brought into the left by the movement of Bernie Sanders and AOC...
Must have been really tough for Karl Marx to write all this stuff while he was living on his friend's couch.
I would just highly encourage you to look in the history of leftist political leaders and try to understand how these general theories might be relevant to the United States today. So that if you ever are in a position like this, you will know exactly what to say.
This is Ben Corolla with Rebel Headquarters. You can catch my show Galaxy.
I think communism fucking rocks, dude. Travis says, the infinite worthiness of every individual, except the ones that don't fit in. Exactly, because these people have no problem with finding the interlopers, right? Finding the people that don't measure up to their conceptualization of what it means to be a good person, or to have worked hard, or to have done something. None of that stuff is they don't consider any of those types of things, right? They have their own litmus test, just like any system has a litmus test. And it's fucking obnoxious that they try to suggest otherwise. So, that's all the videos we got. Maybe you guys want to check out the ANTIWORK Reddit? Let's see what the ANTIWORK Reddit has to say. Well, let me shrink myself here. Ooh, there we go. Can we do it again? There we go. Make sure everybody can read it. Anti-work, unemployment for all, not just the rich. Restructuring recent events. Finance bro talks shit to his 60-plus hour waitress friend. Needs to know if he's an asshole when he blames her for low wages. Well, that seems like a lot. I hope this is allowed because I love it. Eat the rich, but just one. Just one, I'm telling you. We just eat one billionaire and the rest will fall in line. More of those realistic positions. We generated record profits last year. Good work, team. Sorry we don't have budget for salary increase. Employee retention is difficult in this economy. A lot of memes. He speaks the truth. He does indeed. Since the CDC says a 10-day lockdown would tank the economy, it stands to reason that if the U.S. labor went on general strike for 9 days, we could demand anything we wanted. Oh my goodness. Otto says, okay, I met my quota for cringe. Thank you. Why am I not surprised this exists? Almost. All right, got to go to bed. Take care. I'll see you later, Otto. Appreciate you stopping by, buddy. The truth about how the American economy works, Nobody is trying to fix the problems we have in this country. Everyone is trying to make enough money so the problems don't apply to them anymore. Yeah, that's probably true to some degree, honestly. This is the whole problem. What is your primary responsibility when you acquire a new job? They answered to earn enough money to pay your bills. The correct answer is to help the business operate and make profit. Oh my goodness. The second party of capital strikes again. Ooh, this has been tagged with communist. Democrats have dual supermajorities in California's Assembly and Senate. Gavin Newsom, the state's governor, is a Democrat who campaigned on single payer. Today, single payer died in the state assembly. The state's insurance industry wins again. They must be very disappointed in all the people they constantly vote for over and over and over again. Travis says, I definitely agree with that, but it's just an observation, not an argument. Yeah, there's lots of things, right? Like there's a Venn diagram. There's lots of parity you can find within these kinds of movements. And if you're not a critical thinker, if you're the type of person that just wants a salve, just wants an answer, you find it and you're just like, oh my God, this is it. I found a way through it. If I join you, you'll be nice to me. And I agree with you. And that's about as deep as it goes. We are told in the U.S. to give 30% of our monthly salaries just to have a home. Well, probably a nice home at that rate. Organized Educate Agitate says, in the Soviet Union, the state kept the rents below 4% of the employees' monthly salaries. Above 4% was criminal. Yeah, but what is the quality of life of for those people? Like, below 4% of what? Yeah, so you're going to live in a giant fucking block of apartments, little 500 square foot apartments, because, well, that meets your 4% requirement, because it's all relative to what you make. It's relative to what you make. Was their goal to make young people so resentful that in the future our primary source of entertainment will be watching assisted living facilities burn down? It feels like what millennials have learned in the last 15 years is that absolutely none of our institutions are looking out for us, providing a safety net or rooting for us to succeed. Oh, I don't know. I have no idea. And it just seems like there's just more of that. More with that. I guess that's what happens when you have a Reddit of 1.6 million people. Not a lot there. Not a lot to look at. Mankind was meant to work in December. We weren't meant to hide from wolves, drink, and pray our autumn harvest will last us through the dark months. Sure. Oh my God. Who's going to pay for it? Who's going to pay for it? This is from Derek Smith. A mustachioed, looks like he's a nurse. Last words I'll never forget. The response my patient gasped out between labored breaths to me and my team after we explained that he needed to be intubated and placed on a ventilator. We then called his wife to have him speak to her for what was likely his last opportunity, as many patients do not recover once tubed. This situation is by far the worst thing I've witnessed in my collective 12 years of critical care and anesthesia. Next level heartbreaks equals having to hear a dying patient use his last words to worry about healthcare finances. This country is truly a failed state, and it's so sickening to witness firsthand, more blatantly than ever. That's a sad story. I don't know what that has to do with anti-work. If the office can be managed from home, then the home can also be managed from the workplace. Finally, a desk for working parents. Yeah, you're going to get a lot of work done with little Toby here sitting right next to you. Oh, yeah. Travis says we have a lot of those concrete blocks built in the 50s and 60s. You know who lives in them? The absolute poorest. Yeah. 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 We have the same thing in the United States. They're called ghettos. Affordable housing. My apologies. Revolting is kinky. My fetish is rich people not getting what they want. Define rich people. For most people like this, rich people is anyone that has more than they do. Unpopular opinion, meet popular opinion. The best thing you can do early in your career is to realize no company will ever care about you, and you should work as little as you need to in order to get by and not give them even one extra second of your life. Jordan Kong said, unpopular opinion, the best thing young people can do early in their careers is to work on the weekends. Yeah, it's about demonstrating value. Most companies like to make money. Most companies like to be successful, whether that's a mom and pop restaurant or that's a giant corporation. They like to see that people will provide them something, and then they will in turn give you something back. Monday Funnies. Travis says, if you never want to be recognized for your work, that's an excellent strategy. Exactly. What is the strangest thing you've done for cash? I took out a loan to go to school so I could get a job to pay off my school loans. Yeah, predatory lending is a problem. 1,000%. And, yeah, it just kind of goes on from there. I don't know. We could probably... It's just the same shit over and 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 over again. Well, I think we're going to have an early night. I don't know if I can... How much more I can stand of fucking anti-work stuff. I don't know if I can do it. I don't think I can do any more. I think that's about it. That's going to do it for the show. Thank you guys for coming and joining. Remember, there's no show on Wednesday night. We'll be back Friday night on YouTube with something. Do something fun. Try to do a check-in on Diane for old time's sake. You know, I'm going to save that for Friday because I think she's had a lot of new stuff. And I found a lot of old stuff of hers as well that's been... disappeared from YouTube, but they still exist. I've been sitting on it for a while. I've been sitting on it for a minute, but I was kind of waiting until like the right moment because we did that huge like 5-hour stream about Diane. So I'm waiting. I'm biding my time, but we'll be back. We'll be back Friday. I can't do it Wednesday because I have other Zoobox stuff to do. I have other Zoobox editing to get done. I have 2 podcasts. I've got 2. One goes to the library, one goes to the movies. Recorded, needs to be edited, and I got to get that stuff done. And but anyways, thank you so much everybody for joining me. I appreciate you guys. You make the show better. Tarami, Hagbird, Otto, Prophet, Big Paul. Thanks for stopping by. And we'll see you guys again on Friday. Good night.